All right, the Reds, it is Talking Reds, and I'm with Connor Phillips today. We have reversed roles from a few years back when Connor used to ring me when he was at Radio City, and we'd have a chat about the Reds, and now I'm ringing him, and we're going to have a chat about the Reds, and Connor's there in Northern Ireland at the moment, having just finished work, so thanks for joining us, mate. I guess the big thing that we're all talking about at the moment in the world of Liverpool is the mad injury list. And, you know, on the surface of it, it obviously doesn't look great. I mean, there's been 15 injuries this season for Liverpool so far. City actually toppers. They've had 16 so far this season. One thing I've been thinking about over the weekend and, you know, looking forward to Leicester and stuff like that is because of the way the season is, because of the way, you know, the situation we're in and everything else. You know, you've worked in journalism for a long time as well. Do you think maybe some of the darker arts are going on here? So I'm thinking sort of Alex Ferguson, Ryan Giggs, Twisted Sock. Do you know what I mean? Do you think a lot of these injuries might be okay when we get to Leicester?
Sometimes I think that's more of a player thing than a club thing. Sometimes I think players will... They know their bodies better than anyone else, and they will play right to the knuckle. And when they feel a wee bit ropey, they'll pull back. So the two in question at the moment were Andy Robertson potentially. It was a mixture between I think it might be cramp, I think it might be a muscle strain, I think it could be a hamstring thing. And now it's coming out that it might have just been cramp, and he's grand. He'll take a wee break from Scotland, and he might be back. So you're going, go on, Andy lad. And then the same with Jordan Henderson. We're hearing today that Jordan Henderson is out of the England game, but he's probably played right to the knuckle. And he's thinking to himself, well, hold on a second. England aren't going to make the Nations Intertoto Cup, whatever the fuck that international thing is. They're not going to make the finals of it now. So maybe Jordan Henderson's gone, well, you know what? If I've taken him to the knuckle now, maybe I'll step back and he could be okay for Leicester. So I do appreciate the joy of the dark arts. I don't think the dark arts come into it until we're down the road a wee tiny bit. And I think maybe in the current climate where we don't know what's happening, Christ almighty, Aston Villa put 7 past us. What's going on in the world? I don't think it's as dark arty as it has been in the past. But I think, don't get me wrong now, in 15 weeks' time, in another batch of internationals, you could be seeing the absolute essence of the dark arts. Oh, he's not playing for that international team. And maybe, who knows, a pile of them would have got the vaccine and there's no coronavirus and somebody automatically gets symptoms. That could be happening. But I just don't fully buy into that at the moment. Not fully. A little bit.
I just wonder, because, I mean, I'm not doubting, you know, anyone, what they say or anything like that, but I just think, you know, maybe it's in their mind how much football they've got to play. So, you know, for instance, when Andy Robertson does his post-match interview, Scotland having qualified for the Euros, he drops it in straight away. Oh, felt me hamstring a little bit there, you know, and then he's withdrawn from the less important game. And then we've got until Sunday, I think everyone's got to remember as well, to try and get some of these lads fit. And, you know, Fabinho, I think that the timeline on him was that he should be available, hopefully, fingers crossed, for Sunday. And what I'm saying is I'm trying to sort of I'm trying to talk a few people down off cliffs here, Connor, because, you know, I've seen some mad little graphics going around on social media and stuff of teams that we could see on Sunday and things like that. But, you know, I think there's every chance that we see Matip and Fabinho at centre-half, for instance, which straight away, what's wrong with that? You might see Milner maybe at full-back. You might see Thiago in midfield, by the way, who, you know, he didn't go and play in an international duty, but he's just sort of, we don't really know what's up with him, and have they just held him back, and now they're going to introduce him? You know, so what I'm saying is, you know, you see on the surface the amount of injuries. You see that Mo's got, you know, tested positive for corona and all that, and I think it's easy to go, but then it's also worth remembering we've got some good lads, we've got a good squad.
Yeah, that's the word there, squad, because there have been times when Liverpool had an absolute ball of midfielders and we didn't really know what to do with them, and they were all 6.5, 7s out of 10s, and we thought, but now it's this whole thing. It's such a cliche to say, but trust in the process, trust in Jurgen. And I think we might have to start doing that now a little bit more, because when you see Liverpool having Gini Wijnaldum and having Thiago, and post his injury, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Henderson and Keita, and then you could go on and on and on and mention the players who are playing in the middle of the park or in that middle third, and then the youngsters coming through, and you're going, geez, what are we going to do with these players? We're going to have to send Curtis Jones on loan. You know, we're going to have to do something where everyone's kept happy. And then Jurgen kind of goes, no, just hold on there. Just hold back a wee tiny bit. And then you do get this coronavirus situation where Thiago's out and Keita's out and now Salah's out. And I'm not saying for 1 second that Jurgen has a crystal ball and he's going, oh, I'm all right for the coronavirus. We're grand here. We'll be fine. But there is an element of us having to trust in the process. The biggest thing for me out of all of this is that, right, Liverpool, this must be the number one time when you've gone, just give Gini a contract. Just give him what he's looking for, because he's proved his worth. I thought he was a bit ropey in the first 2 or 3 games of the season when he was trying to prove himself a bit much, but I think he settled into it rightly now. And I think this is the point where you go, okay, this squad, it's a massive squad game. None of us thought Jota would get as much football as he had. We certainly didn't think that Jota would get the goals that he's got. None of us thought that Phillips, our fella, as we call him, our boy, would play in centre half. Like, I genuinely watched the Twitter feed when that game was being released, or that team was being released a number of weeks ago, and I thought, is that one of the coaches? Is that the guy who collects the bibs? Is that Phillips? He looks 25 years older than the first time I saw him. So maybe now it's a mixture of what you were saying there and going, right, okay, we'll be fine, but also maybe trusting in the process. Although you can ask me about this again if Leicester beat a 7-0 over the weekend, but I go into a game like you rather than going, no, we're not. Yeah, you are probably going to blood 1 or 2 youngsters. That crazy French centre half, the young fella who's 18, who got his head shaved during the week, he'll probably play some football over the next couple of weeks.
Billy Cometio, yeah.
Billy. My friend Billy, ha, 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 says Jurgen. He'll probably play a bit now, and you kind of have to go, right, fuck it, we're all in. Let's go all in and just say this is the way it's going to be. And then players will come back, and it's going to happen to other teams. So I'm trying to go from sort of Liverpool Anfield wrap cup half full rather than half empty, if you know what I mean.
I like it, mate. On Gini, just briefly as well, there is some speculation out there today, not necessarily from the best sources, if I'm being honest, but there is some talk out there that he's been offered a 3-year deal and a 40% wage increase by Liverpool. He is, of course, 30 now, but I think most people would say he's one of the fitter lads at the club. So we'll see on that one. We'll see how that develops. I mean, there is a thing now where, even though we're in sort of November, people are talking about transfers again a lot. And there was something which caused a little bit of talk this week, Connor, in The Athletic, from David Ornstein, where he was sort of saying that all the indications he had was that Liverpool wouldn't go out and buy a defender or centre-half specifically in the January market. And I thought, oh yeah. I mean, again, in terms of sort of playing the game, darker arts, no one at a football club has to ever tell you the truth, do they?
No, never. And they never have. And I think all of us, and the reason that you at the Anfield Wrap got hours of content over the fact that Thiago's coming, this is the greatest day ever, was because it was kind of like, no. And obviously, like a wee duck on the water, the wee feet were kicking away underneath. And Jurgen was going, right, let's get that boy. But you don't have to tell anybody. Now, I will credit where credit's due to a colleague of mine, David Ornstein. He's normally quite on the money, and he's quite good at that type of thing. I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time with him and just kind of pick his brain. Specifically, when you're talking Arsenal, he's good at that. But he's also kind of good at getting a foot into other camps. So, yeah, nobody has to tell us the truth. Gini signing a 3-year deal on a 40% pay raise. What do you think? Because there's finances coming in, Champions League football, you would hope would be on the horizon for next season, which means you're on a financially sound footing. The deal with Nike is always worth a few quid. Everywhere I look now, there's a Liverpool jersey somewhere, and you'd think that financially we'd have the sound footing on it. Wijnaldum, is he worth? Yeah, let's do it. And he wasn't one of the highest paid players in the club anyway, was he?
No, he wasn't. He was one of the, for where he is in his standing, it's actually quite low, and they've sort of, they've let it run down. Obviously, they didn't give him an improved deal. I mean, it is a bit of a sort of turning point for him with his age and with what else might be on the table as well, because obviously there's still rumoured interest from Barcelona. I think that one will sort of run and run. But there are 11 games for Liverpool to negotiate before they can do any business of any sort.
Oh, that's good. You call me journalist. That's good journalism work there, Robbo.
You've
worked out the game number before the transfer window is open. That's top end stuff, lad.
You're into that. So, knowing what you know and knowing that sort of it's basically going to be Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday for the foreseeable. How are you mentally as a Liverpool fan about that prospect? Are you knowing that our first three centre-halves are out, knowing that we played, I think it's 6 different centre-half combinations this season in our 8 Premier League games already, which is mad. Are we in general feeling about that, and how likely do you think it is that Ornstein has nailed it there and Liverpool won't go out and remedy that by buying someone?
Like everybody, I did enjoy the tweets, specifically from the Anfield Wrap. Any word of you, Dejan Lovren? Can we pick you up for work in the morning? Ragnar Klavan, are you about for a game? Have you still got your boots there? You and I almost got a call at one stage, I think, to see if we maybe play at centre half. 2 wee fellas like us. You have to be okay, Robbo, because if you're not okay, you drive yourself mad. You drive yourself crazy to the point that I'm not watching ends of Liverpool matches because I'm too nervy and I'm too into it. And specifically as champions, weirdly, I thought once we won the Premier League, I would relax a bit. I've gone completely the opposite. I got more wound up now about Liverpool matches than I ever did before. I'm avoiding things on social media and stuff. But you have to be okay about it. You have to be. You have to take a wee bit of positivity from, like I said, like Phillips has done well, like Billy the Kid, who did very well in the Cups and, did well pre-season as well. You've got to be happy enough that the 2 lads who potentially might play on Saturday at centre-half are going to be okay. Trent has only got a small muscle injury. He should be back, what are we talking, 2 weeks when football resumes? So a month all in all, 2 weeks. He was out for 2 weeks when we come back. But you have to also have a bit of faith in what's back there. Like James Milner, he's heading towards Gareth Barry's record of having more Premier League appearances than anyone else. Probably not as fast as he was, but he's probably as fit as he's ever been. He'll give you that leadership. How they do Robbo, Trent, and the reliance on the fullbacks, we'll probably see a little bit less of that. But then that means, do you play Jota a little bit further back, almost as a winger? Fuck knows what a winger are these days. They don't exist anymore. Sure they don't. So you have to be okay with it. You have to be, because you have to go, right, this is what we have in front of us. The other teams are dealing with it as well.
Yeah.
That's
the important thing, I think. City
do lose a lot of players, but City have a massive big squad and they've always got cover for them. And maybe for the first time ever, we've got cover for them. And it's weird saying that as the Premier League champions. So I'm all right with it. Ask me in about fucking 3 weeks when I'm throwing this cup against the wall going, who's playing? What? Jota's doing centre half. Oh, shit.
I think though as well, mate, some of the stuff that's sort of gone on in the last sort of 18 months, if you like, for Liverpool, it has been really good prep for this, situation that no one was expecting to unfold. And what I mean by that is, your stuff with like the World Club Cup, where a whole team of youngsters is sent to Aston Villa while another team of Liverpool players is on a plane. And, that's absolutely mad and bonkers and everything else. But what it does mean, and the way Jurgen fielded certain sides in the FA Cup and stuff like that, it means that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of players at Liverpool now who've got some experience under the belt. So, you think about, Liverpool have got Atalanta coming up in the Champions League, and people are like, well, Phillips can't play in the Champions League because he's not registered. Well, Rhys Williams played away at Atalanta and we battered them. And Rhys has got that under his belt now, and he's played against Ajax as well. He's got that under his belt. So sort of what I'm saying is, you feel like you can start to trust these lads. There's almost things that we buy into, isn't there, about football? Like, you can't put a young centre-half in, bound to make a mistake. Or you can't have a young rookie right back in like Nico Williams. He's bound to make a mistake. But all of these lads because of the way Jurgen's managed the team and the squad. They've got some experience, and you've got a situation now, mate, where Curtis Jones, for instance, you mentioned though, some people saying he should maybe go on loan. He's a senior player for Liverpool now, and you see him in the lineup, and you're like, oh, he's sound, Curtis, yeah. There's you're not worried that there's a rookie stepping in. He's got experience under his belt.
Yeah, and you mentioned Rhys Williamson. I never even mentioned him. I was going through the centre halves in my head, and he'd completely gone out of my head. And like you said, he played well. Right, granted, I have to say, Atalanta was shite when we played them. They weren't good. But he did what he had to do. This was a lad playing non-league a couple of years ago. And it comes down to this trust. Now, I'd always be very keen to talk to a footballer that fell out with Jurgen Klopp, but I can't find one. Do you know what I mean? I can never find a footballer who was sent or sold or sent on loan who goes, Klopp's full of shit. He's a bag of piss. Don't like him. I can't believe he did that to me. You always feel that Klopp has got something in his head, and he has this trust element. He goes up to Nat Phillips and he talks about him, and the first thing he does, he talks about him in the post-match press conference. In fact, he's asked the questions, but he talks in such glowing terms with him. Like Rhys, like Billy, we said there now. We are so lucky to have him in little pots of drama like this. And the way in which Liverpool deal with the next bit is going to be similar, like you said, sending two teams off. Like, I haven't even mentioned Shaqiri. I haven't even mentioned Divock Origi, who scored in the Champions League final, scored twice against Barcelona in Champions League semi-final, scored against Everton, likes to score against Everton. We've forgotten about that. So are we spoiled, I suppose? Is that maybe the counter question for that?
That may well be the case, because you mentioned Everton there, and we recorded the main podcast in the studio before, which I really enjoyed. We are still trying to do some bits and bobs in person, and at the same time sort of fit in with the lockdown. But we talked in that podcast about that Everton game, and I was saying about sort of you went from seeing the lineup in that game, where you're walking up to the ground going, what the fuck's Klopp doing here? What's this team? What? And then we win 5-2, and you're like, it's a fucking genius, Klopp, isn't he? and I think you're right, mate. That the sort of there was a poll, there was some kind of, was it a poll? Was it a study? I'm not sure what it was, but the other week something came out saying Klopp is seen as one of the best leaders around, not just in football, in sort of a wider world. Like, you see people messing about saying, well, he'd be a good president or a good prime minister, but he has got that quality where you imagine if you played for him, you literally, I know it's a cliche, but you'd run through walls for him. And I kind of feel like if you're going into work, which is what it is for them, he's making the atmosphere positive all the time. He's talking everyone up. Other managers, you would imagine, even past Liverpool's, you would imagine, with this amount of injuries, would be feeling sorry for themselves, but Klopp somehow turns it round where you're quite intrigued by what they're going to do. And
weirdly, is irony the same word? It's against Leicester now, and it's against Brendan Rodgers we play now. And I had a very soft spot for Rodgers, a lot of time for Rodgers, but I always got a little bit sort of frustrated. It was always the last 2 or 3 sentences of a press conference or an interview, and you'd go, stop it. If you had stopped before you said the last two things about character and this random thought or fact you had where we all know you're talking shite, right? You don't really get that with Klopp as much. You do have a little bit of calmness. Look at this for a stat. Liverpool players under Klopp have missed more than 190 games from injuries caused in international duty. So he's obviously used to this now. He obviously has a plan to have a plan. Now, don't get me wrong, with Phillips, for example, we got lucky there because he was going at one stage, I think, out in loan. Rhys Williams was probably going back out in loan at one stage as well. I think Kevin Kelleher, the goalkeeper, I know he hasn't seen much football, but I just know watching him and being part of the Irish squad, he was going to go out in loan as well. But he's kind of going, right, let's temper the loan system here. But isn't a testament to the youth setup that the young fellas seem to be good enough. Klopp has no problem working with the youth setup. He seems to have a very good sort of A-team, B-team mentality. As soon as you're good, you come up with, you train with us, you drop back, and then they do a lot of training together. And obviously with his coaching team being sort of fully immersed in the youth coaching team, that is a huge part to play in it as well. So yeah, you'd run through a brick wall for somebody, but if you know that everybody in your youth setup is playing to the same level as your senior setup, then it's kind of an easier transition. And you can see that with a lot of young players who try and break through and don't break through. And that's often because there isn't the linear sort of easy move. Now it's become a thing. It's become quite cool, and it's become the thing to do. But then if you look at, you look at Man United, even though there's so many players coming through and the youth team players get a go at it, you never feel there's ever at the moment. Now it was completely different under Alex Ferguson, but sometimes you feel it's a bit of disjointedness from the ones that they give a chance to and playing first team football, because they don't really have the identity the ones had. And that's where Liverpool can sort of take advantage of that, because there's a very specific identity at the moment.
Yeah, on our packed main show today, it is packed and it's very good and it's out there and it's free. So whether you subscribe or not, you can get stuck into this one. We, as well as us talking about this kind of stuff, injuries, looking forward to Leicester and all that kind of stuff, we were also reacting to the sad news that Ray Clemence passed away. And Neil has spoken to Clive Tilsley, who knew him very, very well. So that will be worth a listen and worth you tuning in for. I mean, for me, with Ray, I'm a little bit too. It's the first time I've been able to say this for ages. I'm a little bit too young to remember him. I certainly didn't get to watch him play for Liverpool. I know the stories. I've read the books. I've seen the videos, and we're getting to see a lot of stuff right now in tribute to the man. I thought the stuff that the club put out was absolutely brilliant, by the way, and they absolutely nailed the tone of it. But did you ever get to meet Ray yourself, Connor, in your official duties?
Yeah, I did. I got to meet him twice, I think. It was at award ceremonies. But you do that thing where you're like, I can't go and say hello to him. I can't. I can't say. And it's weird when you walk up to people and you do meet them, specifically former Reds, and going, "How you doing? Good to meet you. I'm a big Liverpool fan." And you're going, he must hear that every day. But you also want to keep your professional head on, right? Normally, if I'm working up as an interviewer, as a journalist, or as a presenter, you're going, "How you doing? Listen, we'll do X, Y, and Z," but you want to go, "I'm a big Liverpool fan as well." And normally, it sort of disarms them a wee bit, and you get a bit of crack out of them. But never really got that chance with Ray Clemence. Spoke to him very briefly once. I think it was in a room. It was an award ceremony, and I was trying to get people to do like sort of on camera interviews with us. Side camera interviews, like you basically, I was going around the room picking the famouses, right, and going, give me the ones. And Ray Clemence was there, and I was like, right, you're going to come up here. But he was doing other stuff as well. He couldn't do it, but honestly, he couldn't have been nicer about not being able to do it. It was one of those. And then when I knew I wasn't gonna get to speak to him, but I was like, I'm a big Liverpool fan, and he sat down, caught the accent, and then just went through the Irish players he played with in the past. But very limited, sort of maybe 5-6 minutes. I'm really annoyed I never got a photograph with him, but just a real gentle giant. And I loved then there was photographs of him, or beg your pardon, videos of him recently, just being a normal human being, having a few pints, being with his family. And I love that probably more than I love watching, specifically when you're trying to remember somebody as a person. I love that more than potentially him making the most amazing save ever. And he just seemed to be an absolute gentle giant, and the club are going to miss him. And I kind of echo what you said. I think Liverpool recently, probably, I don't know, under the new ownership / own managership and the people who look after the second and third layers of the club, you can sense that they recognize how much the club means to people, and vice versa, more so than I can remember in my time as a Liverpool fan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I think there was a time where there felt a distance there, if you like, from the way the club was run and the way it operated, and then us. And I do feel that gap has closed massively, and they've done some great stuff around fans who are sort of famous for supporting Liverpool for 30, 40 and 50 years. It's nice to see the club do stuff around that and not ignore it. You'd expect them to do something around Ray, of course, because he's widely accepted as being the best goalkeeper that ever played for Liverpool. But nevertheless, it's just the tone of it and the fact that they nail it. You can tell that it's crafted by people who love Liverpool also. And, I was listening to, one of your former colleagues, Steve Hoddesall, talking about Ray, and he knew him very well and did a lot of work with him in the lounges and stuff like that. And the stuff that you just said there about, he must have had it a million times where someone comes up to him and says, Ray Clemence, 3 European Cups, all that kind of stuff. He's a hero for a lot of Reds and for a certain era of Reds. And what Steve said there was that happened all the time. And every time it happened, he said he would always have a smile on his face and he would always take the time. And that must be difficult, mustn't it, for anyone? Because it's sort of almost chipping into your personal life. And, maybe it just catches you off guard one day and you're having a bad day and you're just like, oh, can't be arsed. But he was never like that. And, like you said, it always struck me that he was just a sound fella, on top of everything else. And I think, you mentioned some of that footage that came out of sort of him on the aisle and on beaches and singing You'll Never Walk Alone. And he's just got this huge smile. And I think, it's hard not to smile yourself when you see that.
Yeah, and I think what that tells me as well, it's maybe getting a wee bit away from Ray Clemence, but linking Ray Clemence at the same time, is don't take, and Reds, if you're watching this, don't take the success now for granted. Because Ray never did. And right up until his death, he was so incredibly proud, like you said, of all that they've achieved. And you said him three European Cups. He's like, yeah, I had 3 European Cups. And if you're a 30-something Red like I am, or a 50-something Red like Robbo is there, and we have seen Liverpool in 3 Champions League finals, 4 or 5 massive European finals in our lifetime, that we owe it to people like Ray Clemence, who did it before us and set the standard and allowed Liverpool to get back to that standard. We should never take for granted that we see those things happening. And every time you watch Liverpool win beat Atalanta 5-0, and it should be 6 or 7, you should just go, yeah, this is because of what was set up before. But then on the same breath, don't take it for granted, because football is so fickle that it could be, I'm not going to say it out loud, it may not continue in that vein, but let's hope it does. And to Ray as well, like I'm glad he got to see Liverpool win other European Cups as well as his own. And he never shied away from the fact that he says, yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan, still a Liverpool fan. This is for Liverpool, despite the fact he played for other clubs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the abiding images over the weekend is the welcome he got back when he came back with Spurs from the Cop. Absolutely brilliant. I think a couple of other nice things around it is that, there is now a mural of Ray, and he did get to see that before he sadly passed away. Also as well, I think, for a while he's known that, he wasn't well. And I think another thing that I really liked about it is that he got to stand on the Cop a few times. It was something he always wanted to do, and he went and did it. And I didn't personally see him when he was on there because I was in a different section to where he was, but I heard lots of nice stories about people just being like, "Wow, Ray Clemence is on the Cop."
You think that's the equivalent for players like that for us playing on Anfield? Right. So, okay. Well, I'm not. I don't think. I think it's unrivaled to say that you've played in European Cups at Anfield. Like that's not for all of us. But you see at the end of the season sometimes there's charity matches and stuff. And I've played in one. I've played in like 3 at Old Trafford and Windsor Park and the Aviva Stadium. I was absolutely atrocious in them all, but I got to play. I've never done it at Anfield, but I think if you were ever to get the chance to do that, I know some of you lads have. It must be close to the equivalent of that, where he gets to stand in the Cop and watch the absolute madness, but think, yeah, I did that down there too.
Exactly, yeah.
It's and a long way his memory continue, and just a lovely man. And thankfully, like we said, we've got those memories, and thankfully because of technology and stuff, just rock on to YouTube and just watch Ray Clemence. Yeah,
absolutely. I remember Aldo saying, actually, obviously he stood on the Cop as a Copite and then played in front of it. And I remember always wondering about the dynamic that you're talking about. And I got to ask him once, and I said, when you scored your first goal at Anfield, did it cross your mind at all you know, as you're looking at the Kop, I used to be on there, and he said it didn't just cross my mind. He said I ran towards the Kop, knowing where my mates would be standing because it's where I used to stand. And he said, you know, I gave it sort of one of them. You know, that is literally sort of
I can imagine
living the dream.
I can imagine if Aldo ever did it the other way around. So, you know, as a fan, as a player, and then if he retired specifically now, back in the Kop as a fan, I blocked you on Twitter, I blocked you on Twitter, I blocked you on Twitter, I blocked you on Twitter as well. I'll be Aldo now. Hello, Aldo, if you're watching, please don't block me on Twitter.
Yeah, don't block me either, John. He is good value on there if you're not following him already.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, Connor, been brilliant to speak to you, mate. And as I've been saying there, if you check out the Anfield app today, there is a free podcast out there today talking about everything that's going on. There will be loads more video content, podcast content, stuff on the website, theanfieldapp.com as well. And yeah, subscribe, give it a go, download the app, and you can get some free tokens on the app as well to try out some of our premium content if you don't already subscribe. Connor, thanks very much, mate.
You're brilliant.
Up the Reds, that has been Talking Reds.